Monster Hunter Wilds has become all the rage. It's been a long time coming, and it's fascinating to see this franchise catching on with the international mainstream after being a niche product outside of Japan in the decades prior. In some ways, the game features some of the best gameplay the series has to offer, and its man vs nature action concept still is very unique, so it's refreshing to see the series among the most popular titles right now. Considering its massive sales success, it always had this unique appeal. It just needed the right platforms. But as a longtime fan, I can't help but feel very ambivalent about Monster Hunter Wilds, because at the same time it's also a prime example of overcorrecting a series in favor of casual appeal. There have been debates online about whether Wilds has become too easy, but I don't think that's the best way to describe it. Now, Monster Hunter isn't your typical hack and slash game. Instead of button mashing, the combat relies on thoughtful maneuvers and deliberate attacks with your sometimes slow weapons. These primeval monsters are merciless, often much faster and larger than the player. The fighting itself is at the top of its game in Wilds. Thanks to hefty combat feedback, a couple of new moves, and slightly improved mobility, on top of new systems which feel like natural extensions of the concept, like inflicting smaller wounds. All the new monsters are great additions to the series. Capcom has truly mastered this particular kind of creature design. On one hand, the sophisticated animation work creates intense attack patterns. On the other, it makes these creatures feel alive and like an organic part of this primeval fantasyland, no matter how ridiculous. Not even a weird giant balloon insect feels out of place. After each fight, you have to build new armor from these slain monsters to arm yourself for even bigger and meaner enemies. Apart from the animations, the visuals overall also look as good as ever. There's always room for improvement in visual fidelity, but Monster Hunter has unparalleled detail when it comes to the monsters and also in all its unique weapons and pseudo-prehistoric locations. But combat was always only one part of Monster Hunter. Another crucial aspect of this hunting concept was the preparation. You had to investigate the areas and find material to craft a number of tools and traps from the natural resources around you to stand a chance against these beasts. In the post-game, it was easy to fall into autopilot, grinding through one monster after the other, but the campaigns before that usually provided a broader gameplay loop. You had to search for materials, build a home base, and learn the intricacies of these maps. In the old games, there was certainly lots of room for improvements, and the tutorials could be very tedious. Monster Hunter World, as the first HD game of the franchise, introduced some necessary improvements, like more natural pickup animations or the ability to use items while running or locking on to a monster. It might have gone a little too far for some purists, as it also reduced the individual equipment pieces you had to carry, but I get it. Carrying extra maps and paintballs to track a monster could be alienating. World still balanced it out by only activating your full GPS system after finding multiple tracks of your desired monster in the area. It still felt like hunting. But Monster Hunter Wilds streamlines the non-combat elements so much that they're almost irrelevant. In my opinion, Wilds isn't necessarily too easy, but too simple. The fights themselves are about as long as in prior games and easily can take up to 10 or 20 minutes if you play alone. So the actual monsters don't really feel weaker per se. It's also true that any Monster Hunter game will be easier for veterans because this very deliberate combat system without any visible health bars is more intimidating on a first playthrough. However, Wilds also gives you a mount which will take you to each target monster like a taxi. The game literally showers you in healing items, and even late in the game, it will automatically provide you with all the necessary buffs like heat protection. There's no incentive for you to interact with the environment anymore or plan things out. You could also wrap yourself in healing items and buffs in prior games, but you had to prepare them yourself. Here it's possible to reach the post game without ever making a single potion yourself. You might not even need to upgrade your gear more than twice in the story mode. Monster Hunter Wilds is still a great arena-based action game, but it stripped away the actual hunting. It's ironic, it introduced the series to open world design, yet it's by far the most linear game in the franchise. In return, Capcom increased the focus on storytelling, which results in a linear rotation of doing a boss fight and then watching a dialogue scene on your automated taxi mount before doing the next boss fight.
There's no time to explain. We'll talk while we ride.
Not only does it feel antithetical to a gameplay-focused series like Monster Hunter, but the story isn't even interesting. In fact, it's not even that different from prior games. A big monster terrorizes a village, you need to hunt it down. Other monsters cause calamities, you need to hunt them. The characters are about to find an important MacGuffin, a monster appears and you need to hunt it down. The only difference is that the story scenes are much longer with more dialogue and are now held together by a loose sequence of anime tropes. And because the game design is now so simple, this very crude walking and talking approach of storytelling now replaces the preparation and investigation gameplay of before. The game at least opens up during high rank. There you can finally choose which objectives to tackle in any order to increase your level and maybe find a few new challenges in the map. But the open world still falls flat. Most monsters are already marked, so there's no real exploring, but more taxi driving with no player agency. For some reason, the only thing they didn't streamline is the cluttered and confusing UI. I've always been skeptical of classic franchises turning open worlds because it often ironically means a less open game, and RPGs where all quests boil down to holding your stick towards an GPS icon. Wilds took it to the next level, since you don't even have to hold the stick towards the glowing breadcrumbs anymore. Before each fight, you're forced to endure a minute or two of non-gameplay. There's this mechanic of building emergency camps within the open world, which can in theory be destroyed by wild creatures. But the rest of the game is so simple, you absolutely don't need to engage with this element at all. It really doesn't matter, which kind of highlights that this campaign just isn't well balanced. However, it did remind me that Capcom already did the concept of open world monster survival much better with Dragon's Dogma 2. I know that the combat in that game isn't as deep, which some people criticized. But when it comes to the open world, it truly felt like traveling into uncharted lands, where monsters could always ambush you, and reaching a campsite was an actual achievement. Ultimately, Dragon's Dogma still is a different kind of RPG with a heavy exploration focus, so I understand that it wouldn't translate to the progression of Monster Hunter. But Wilds also feels like it missed its own potential. While I was skeptical of the automated mount even during the first demo of the game, I was still positive that the open environments could bring the franchise to the next level as a sandbox. The bear fight in the beta version truly felt like a new generation of Monster Hunter. The world felt much more alive and hostile, with large hordes of boss monsters, which at the same time were being attacked even more aggressively by other monsters, while hazards like lightning disrupted the fight. But in the end, this promise wasn't delivered. Not only did these spontaneous battle elements suddenly become linear cutscenes in the final game, but outside of this one specific battle against the bears, the world in Wilds was never this dynamic again. These bigger hordes don't exist anywhere else, and while there are some interactive elements within the surroundings, overall it might be less than in Monster Hunter World. While still a good action game in itself, Wilds doesn't feel like the next step for the franchise, but like an extremely linear and less demanding story expansion of world.